Hey, Paul. You all right? Let's see if things are working. Can't seem to hear you. No, can't hear you yet. Can you hear me? All right, let's see. What could it be? So you're unmuted. I'm unmuted. Why am I not hearing you? Let's see if I can. All right, anything now? No, I still can't hear you. Can you hear me, by the way? If you can just text. I'm gonna text you too if it's can't hear. Yeah.
Can you hear me now, Alex?
Oh yeah, that's it. I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, hang on.
We figured it out. Nice.
Wait a minute.
Hey, you know, they always pitch technology like we're in the future, but then every call is opening with, "Can you hear me?"
Can you hear me again?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
You can hear. I've come out the door with a pair of Bluetooth-like headphones speaker, and that didn't work for some reason. And I got this cheap music hat with speakers in for Christmas, so that's what I'm on at the minute. You can hear me.
Yeah. Hey, this is not meant to be perfect, right? I know I've asked you to join in for an odd experiment. Thanks for playing along.
No, but I've got to say, Alex, I was quite excited at the end of this little experiment. So,
yeah, well, I just remember when we were at the conference and you were saying that you've got all of your research around ultrarunning, not all of it, but some of it. And then I was like, well, yeah, I do a running podcast, like on the run, right? Because I think we were chatting with you and someone else about trying to capture the ideas that you get when you're on the run, because they disappear after. I think let's see if we spark some ideas.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, I was supposed to be a few miles away at Teesside University today, but because of all the strikes everywhere, I've ended up from home. So I'm going out now, and it's about an 8 mile route I've got. But I'm happy to talk as long as you're interested and as long as you want to. You still there? Hear me, Alex?
I hear you. I think it's just on my side. I've just gone in to take my trail shoes. Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
I've got you perfectly now, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I just really want to have the right shoes on for this if I'm doing that. Not the basketball ones. All right.
Well, cool. I'm kind of lucky on the shoe front because I only have one pair of trainers. I'll keep it simple.
Oh. Cool. Tuck shoelaces, and I'm with you.
Cool. Well, I'm probably on my...
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to say I'm probably on my noisiest few minutes to begin with. And then it should quieten off.
Yeah, don't worry about this. I've even put in the description of this podcast that it's a very bad listen because I can recorded on the flavor can persevere.
Okay. I've just got you coming back there. I don't know if must be dropping in and out.
You know what? I just so put my
You just I've got full signal at the minute.
improve. Yeah, it's from me. It's from me. Don't worry. I just went into my little bunker house. There's no coverage inside, and just wanted to get the backpack.
Oh, okay.
So I'm ready.
I've got you loud
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, because I'm thinking I'll see if after that I manage to get into the gym as well. I mean, we're on an endurance topic. I've just almost finished what's his face's book, the Goggins. So I'm on that kind of a trip today.
Fantastic.
Right, cool. So yeah, the first thing I wanted to ask you about is what the running and the talking, eh?
Yeah, just really. Nobody will run with somebody, have a nice chat. It's just it's a new one, so I'm enjoying the novelty.
Yeah. I think in the future it's going to be a thing. At least that's what I tell the people that play along with me. I've got a mate that's preparing to do a triathlon with me, and we record from a chip shop where we eat. That's another weird one.
Oh, I'd be in for eating in a chip shop, for talking in a chip shop. That would definitely work.
So I re-listened to your talk from Explore today, by the way, because I did listen to it on a recording. Yeah, I was there, but not there on the Sunday. I think I was late for your talk, so it was a good refresher. So
yeah,
I've actually got some questions.
Rain on that morning,
so I was just thinking, like, listening to you, what you're presenting. So is that all of it part of your PhD, or is that a separate study?
No, so that was the first study of the PhD, looking into the resilience of well-being within polar expeditioners, and of course, previous work I've covered ultrarunners specifically.
Yeah, cool. And then obviously I've seen the slides, but I'm just trying to wait. Like, actually, I took a screenshot on my phone, so let me just remember the little model that you had. So okay. Right, I wanted to ask you. Oh yeah, so you focused on competence, relatedness, and autonomy as the factors to study.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. So it's from social psychology theory, called self-determination theory, and these three needs are proposed to be central to well-being of people generally, and of course in our project and others at the minute, they're looking into, how well that might help us explain behaviour in extreme environments and in endurance activity.
Okay. So, I mean, I've got some of the lists of questions, but now when you mention the endurance and expeditions, would you split them out?
I mean, so there's definitely different factors involved, and of course within my PhD, I started off coming from the lens of ultra distance runners, and then looking at mobile expeditioners. So kind of in line with a long distance multi-day ultra event. But then I've gone on to include people who are based in research bases such as Antarctica. However, the premise is the theory should hold across those environments and still have relevance. What might differ is the way that those needs are met and what the specific challenges might be. If that makes sense, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking, I'm now getting too curious.
Just why I'm saying my general interest as a researcher, I'm broadly interested in how people have the ability to keep going, and that's across, sport, endurance, but also wider life, trauma, so on and so forth. That's the central sort of area that interests me most. How do we keep going? And then on a secondary level, how do we actually have a good quality life? How do we do well in amongst that? So if I bring that back to ultra running, how do we actually have an enjoyable experience? Not just, have a suffer fest, but we find some joy.
Yeah. Well, I found that the only way to finish them properly is if you enjoy them, and like when you take yourself too seriously, there's something that's wrong with your, like what I call for me the bottom layers. Just some of the physiological stuff. It becomes very obvious when you're running long distance that when you start bonking out, it's too late. Like you've missed a meal. So for me, it becomes very obvious when I've missed out some of these. Obviously, there is other aspects. But yeah, interesting. So then, because I do ultra because I find it transfers into life massively. But it's good that you're doing the studies to show that.
Yeah. Well, I'm just about to go past. I'm just going over a motorway actually for about the next 10, 20 seconds. So
I can still hear
you. A bit noisy or I don't think.
Yeah, I think I can hear. I mean, I think sometimes the microphone that I use is decides to pick up random noise on the side, but I can't be bothered. I don't have time to download. Make it better quality. I mean, end of the day, it's not listened to by many people.
Personally, yeah. Yeah, so just coming back as well when you mentioned about how something like missing a meal and the nutrition, you think about all of these different components that are important. And a lot of people, I think, we focus on certain bits, but I think looking at it, can you hear me at the minute, by the way, Alex?
I can hear you perfect.
Oh, cool. Because what I was going to say was, and this isn't directly related to my research, but the way I look at endurance events is basically it's one big stress response. Okay, so it's a stressor, and it's about managing that stressor. And the more you can manage that stressor, and it will be lots and lots of different stressors, of course, but it's trying to do everything to reduce the effect of stress. And that's the reason I said that was when you mentioned food, and obviously nutrition central. And if we're in a state of high stress, one of the first things to go is the digestive system. So it's kind of like we've got to try and dampen that down as much as we can. And then there's just a whole myriad of things that can support us to do that.
Interesting. And by the way, don't worry about being too scientific, right? Some of the stuff we're talking about, like guesses and everything, you know, this is the latest ideas that you got. If you want to try it out, don't worry. Don't think anyone's gonna hit back at you.
Well, I must say, Alex, running's my freest expression. So I guess it probably does the same to the mind as well. Like we were saying before, they'll probably throw things out there when you won't actually care, like you would in other environments.
Yeah. I did love your quote from the presentation at Explore when you were talking about how the environment's shaped us. I mean, you wouldn't be at a geographical conference if you didn't kind of believe part of that, right? But I can see that you really believe that, because some people just say it and then you see their methodology and they kind of take the environment away and then just do an experimental study where they control for the environment. And I'm like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I've got to be honest.
During races, so that was very interesting doing that. So did you do the one that you were presenting at the conference? Is that different from what you were doing during the ultra races when you were talking about the emotional, what do we call it, regulation, and the effect of that on being able to?
So that was I was lucky to get a scholarship to complete a series of studies looking at mood within, it was 4 ultramarathons, complete the studies on in the northeast with a fantastic race series called the Hard Moors series, and it was very much exploratory because obviously a lot of the research work, we get told what the effect is on a person beforehand and what the effect is afterwards, but we don't measure it in the middle. We don't measure it during the race. And having a little bit of experience with ultras, I realised there was some potential to map the changes across the race rather than just pre and post. And so that was the main, I guess, point of difference that we were looking to try and do. And in a really simple way, see what actually goes on in the middle, you know, rather than just saying, well, this mood, you know, so if we take, for example, we get more fatigue start to finish. That was the finding that was in the literature. Yeah, but then at what point does fatigue start to accrue? You know, is it just sort of a linear relationship and it gradually falls, or, you know, what's actually going on? And so that was on a really simple level. That was the nice thing about that series of studies. We managed to get ultra runners who, God bless them, some of them were completing 110-mile races, and they were completing 40 items measure at 5 time points during the race. And whenever I say that out loud now, I apologise to every single runner, because I've done enough 100-mile races myself to know that that's a lot of effort to give to somebody at that point in a race. However, they all did. You know, so there was a real big learning curve as a researcher on that level. And we got, I think, the sort of most interesting finding that was reported in the Finnish study was that those runners who had less deviation on mood performed better.
Yeah.
Which might sound really obvious and simplistic, but of course we measured it and we showed it. So being able to control your mood and you know, maybe sort of psychological on the go more generally will have an impact on your performance.
Yep, that is literally the thing I took away, and because it's something I learned recently through ultras and running, because I recently got an official ADHD diagnosis. I always knew I was emotional, right, and having tantrums, but I hadn't seen it, like how much it impedes me, until I was like midway through an ultra, and I was like, actually, if I just deal with that, everything else is easy. So life is way easier if you're within certain bounds. Yeah. Very interesting.
Well, that's my older brother, by the way, not so long ago had a ADHD diagnosis as well. So when you say that, some of the challenges that creates, but also some of the, I'm not speaking for you here, Alexei, but my brother is incredibly talented.
Yeah. I think I'm good at stuff.
Yeah. The flip side of the coin with it. But yeah, it's literally, if I sort of take it even simpler, when I come back to that idea of a stress response, there's a cost to all of that fluctuation. We don't want any fluctuation. We want to be steady. We want to be stable. We don't want to be high. We don't want to be low. We want to stay in the middle as much as we can, because otherwise our body's going to react in some way that we don't want. And I think that's, as a runner myself, I've always sort of focused on the mental side as much as anything else. But that's because running to me has always been about my mental health.
Oh yeah, 100%. Most
really
people
simply,
don't know. Sorry, did we break up?
Just for a second, I think.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that everybody that runs knows what it does to the mind. It's great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And you know, Alex, I'll just mention with doing a PhD and, you know, family stuff and whatever, I kind of lost my running a little bit last year. And I'm actually quite sort of obsessive, if you like. So I'd been measuring my well-being in different things for a full year every day. And the kind of the correlation for me of running and well-being, it was so stark, it made me think, why am I not doing this so much? You know, prioritising work and sitting in the library and da-da-da-da, when the benefits are so profound.
Yeah. To be honest, it's fine to measure. Like I've actually been doing I've been trying to transfer something from the iron game and sports culture, which is when you, in their sports science studies, they tend to use sometimes when you can't do an objective measure, they use rate of perceived exertion. I don't know if you've heard, but it's like, you know, how many reps do you think you have left in your tank? And I've been trying, instead of using psychological measures, like the stuff from Daniel Kahneman, like, oh, you know, experience sampling, how am I feeling now? Because I tried those scales, but it just didn't click for me. So I was like, wait, so I treat my mental game every day, because I also break down my work day into work chunks. So after every chunk, I'm like, out of 10, how many reps do I think I had? And I've been able to then see when it starts increasing and then back off to not have an ADHD overwhelm later in the day. So it's okay to not trust your intuitions only about stuff. Sometimes you need to put it down on paper and start tracking.
Absolutely agreed on that one, Alex. Definitely.
I hate that I have to do it, because I always was like the intuition guy. Like my PhD is about intuitions. I glorify them sometimes, but man, sometimes I just have bad food and I think I've got like all sorts of problems. And it's like, no, you just had a bad cup of coffee. I'm taking an objective measure. Fine.
Yeah, I'm very much on that same thing of, I started to question, how accurate were my own perceptions and how prone to error were they. And as you say, certain things can throw them out quite a lot, and it's not good. So to have a sort of a rounded viewpoint is really helpful.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about counterexamples. I'm thinking about overconfidence, which is usually bias when we're thinking about science, but in sports performance, I'm like, how can I generate more overconfidence before a run? So different contexts, you need the different approaches, because lately I've been having these discussions with a few mates. We do this philosophy club, and I'm like, the core question I always have is like, how much should I live like a scientist, right? And like, which bits is it good to outsource, not have your intuitions dealing with, which bits you want to be like, that's good, but yeah, that's a very big question. I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it in a lifetime.
No, it's really interesting, and I'm on a similar page too with that one, because I'm forever thinking about my performance and, introspecting on loads of things. But then there's another time just to be, isn't there? And, like now with you, I'm running and I'm having a chin wag, and it's great. And it's quite simple. And I think with endurance activity, I think sometimes we've got to keep it simple, haven't we? It's got to be as simple as possible, because when, that perception of effort or exertion is really high, we don't have the ability to manage all those different things, and, it's got to be really simple.
Yeah.
And I think the tougher the challenge, the more simplistic and maybe the more automated things have to be. So repetition and habit takes over, and we simply just do, because we conditioned ourselves well enough to do it. And kind of conscious awareness, we leave that alone at times.
Oh, I mean, it's you can see the more like higher order thinking disappear very quickly. Anyway, if you pay attention, like when I do CrossFit workouts, I know I lose the ability to do math and keep my reps. So like writing it out, I'm perfectly fine, but I just know a few of these harder things are just, but you don't need them to smash yourself in the gym or to run. But I get you on the simplicity thing. It's under conditions of uncertainty, simplicity actually outperforms. That's actually, the studies are done on that one, right? So it's something I always have to remind people that they like to think.
Yeah.
Because they like to think, they overcomplicate shit.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you the other one I'll just sort of throw in while we're on this thread. I mean, so I don't know about you, but I don't wear a watch of any kind when I run. And I don't measure anything when I'm actually running. And I might be contradicting myself here slightly, because when I think that sensory awareness and the accuracy of my perceptions in a lot of ways, it's probably quite good. But I'm only interested in what the body's telling me. And that feel that you develop, that I think that comes back to that simplicity thing again. The body can do a lot of this stuff for you if you let it. If you don't cloud the waters with so much other stuff, I think we're just conditioned to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's really funny how it's like a getting out of your own way. So for people that can't meditate, running does it, because it literally takes away the idea of yourself in the middle of experience very quickly, because you zone in and you fuse with your experience a bit easier. Getting in the zone, right? Getting the runner's high. I'm with you on that one. Definitely feels like, because I don't wear the watch because I don't know what to measure. Like, I always feel like if I get into that game, it will become about winning. And I don't think getting good at ultra running is about winning. If you do it as by proxy, it's because the people that tend to obsess with like that competitive mindset, it becomes optimization is about like getting better, you know, but you start losing the opportunity to learn as you're doing it, because most of ultras is like when you fuck up, it's most of the times a novel situation, like, oh, I didn't think I would pass out trying to take a shit. This was never on the cards before. You gotta, when you're more in a playful mode, definitely I find it easier.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, that does link back to some of my research work, or not directly, but the theoretical base in terms of motivation. You know, when we talk about intrinsic motivation, the joy of the act itself, and how intrinsic motivation will sustain us better and longer. And if the goals are about external things, then, you know, sometimes it can have negative trade-offs, like you say there. And for me, I've seen that with a lot of good ultra runners. They're so at peace. They're so at peace in that environment because it's a place of joy to them. And it's natural, you know. And then there's the people who are forcing it and pushing it. And I think you've got to have that natural joy of what you're doing to really go to those places.
Yeah, and how does that transfer to expeditions? Because I'm asking for a friend, because I was always thinking like, I'm not doing the ultras for any purpose, but at one point it clicked for me. So my thinking is, a lot of scientists are now spending their time in front of computers. So in the field, they're actually going to die. Whereas I have a skill to not die easily, you know, just out in the open. So I was like, if there's going to be work for people like me that want to do science, not standing in front of a computer, expeditions could be a thing. But then I saw the people that explore, and I think I'm like way like above all, like this thing is like way harder. Like the people there, when they were talking about what they're doing, I'm like, this is a whole nother level.
Well, maybe, but I think if I answer you on my gut response here, one of the things that I'm just going through one of my PhD studies at the minute with some interview data, and that the graded development of, you know, of experience and training. And I think one of the things that somewhere like Explore, you get a snapshot of someone who's done Everest or whatever the massive challenge is. And it gives this perception of sort of, you know, A to B, when actually it's been A to Z through the other 24 letters, and they've developed. And I think that's one of the things with endurance activity and expeditioning is, it's that graded process, and it develops. And so if you look to go from doing a 5K park run to doing the South Pole, you're probably going to get into serious trouble. You probably wouldn't get out there in the first place, but, you know, there's lots of examples of people with lots of money where really bad stuff happens just because they haven't gone through that process. And I don't think it's as glamorous as we might make out. It's training for your half marathon, the marathon, or getting out in the wind and the rain and training. You know, it all adds, it all accrues as value at the end of the day.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking, like, where Explore could be helpful as a thing in the sand for me is just to keep going and seeing what other people are doing and get into that game easily, because I've noticed like I can pick up stuff, but it takes me like 5 years to go into it. because I was just gonna start running a bit, and then running ultras. But I'm trying to do multi-day stuff now, so I got a bike. So just learning to be knackered day after day, I think, is a crucial skill, and not having the need to be just feeling at home and comfortable for a while. I think that's the ultimate thing.
Yeah, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable.
yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it's an important part of it, isn't it? Because you then find that joy. You find the joy in dark places where other people can't.
Yeah, because that reminds me of your talk, because you were talking about finding resources, whether it's going to be within yourself, others, and the context. So is that what you're talking about, kind of? Right. But then, give me some examples, because the theory makes sense to me, but like something from your data that I can selfishly reapply.
Gosh, sorry, just say that bit before again. I was just running past some lads and giving me some comments.
Yeah. So you were talking about finding resources. So you were saying, just learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I was thinking if that relates to, the theory that you've got and about, finding, you were talking about at the conference about finding resources in yourself, relationships and context. So that's at the theoretical level, but if you give some examples so I can literally kind of start thinking about what it means. Because I kind of think I know from my perspective, but just, what was it in the studies in the detail?
Yeah, so if we think about, we've already mentioned kind of at the individual level about something like the type of, cognition, ability to control thoughts and emotions and things. That's within us to a degree. But also, it can be influenced by things in the wider environment. And so a good example in a lot of endurance races, I think, is and long expeditions. There's quite often interactions with other people, that add value to us. So whether that is something as simple as somebody at a checkpoint providing you with your water, some food, some drink or something. And that's a simple example of where you were navigating to some resources that are outside of yourself and you were gaining something from that. The same goes for Kit. Kit's another example of, I'm a massive fan in long races of every piece of kit having special powers. This is the over egg in the pudding.
Yeah.
But every piece of kit I embellish the value of. To me, it's kind of placebo. But that piece of kit, a fresh t-shirt, fresh socks, I want to use that. So within me, some people see it's just a pair of socks. To me, working with the mind, that pair of socks just really gives me a kick up the ass and I feel better. And so that's something that's external. One example is a person, the other example is an inanimate object. And the way you look at those things could have an effect on, your. I like the idea of perceived effort, rate of exertion.
Mm-hmm.
These little things will bring that rate of exertion down a little bit. And the more of that you can do, the better place you're going to stay. You can go to a grander level, you can look at family support generally. You can look at, you have stability in where you live. You have a basic level of, your basic needs are met day to day. All of these things add up like a big cocktail to do really well. And that's what I mean when I say looking past just what within the person. Sorry, Alex, I don't know if that made any sense.
Absolutely, and that's entirely my experience. So like on the like the kit, I've optimized it to where I could, but then after that, what was meaningful is just to look cool. Like there's something about ultra running fashion. Some of it is just like, oh, I don't know why people want to look like a, you know, I'm not gonna put epithets, but there's something that doesn't appeal to me. So I've picked what I want to wear. I like it. Some of it doesn't. It's not usually kit for running. Like also when I dropped a hat in the mud on one of the runs, the mud is still on that hat. That's a memory of doing 70 kilometers. I was like, keep it there. Wear it as a badge of honor. So meaning making is definitely something that I've. It's interesting. Oh, my internet gone. I think my internet dropped for a sec. Are we back here?
Yeah,
Cool. And I was thinking about also meaning making from yourself, but I feel like the basics, I definitely get it. So it made me think about why, people criticize that ultra running is very, middle class and white, but it probably is because you need to have all of your basics met to be even thinking about then challenging yourself in something like this. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
About if you don't have your basics, like your everyday life is that kind of a struggle. But to me it's fascinating that every time because I've grown up poor, but every time I do well, then I can't cope well, so I need the stress. So that made me think about that. So definitely matches my experience. And then it also made me think about what it made me think about when you were saying so. Putting resources from yourself, and and family and support. So what's interesting about that is that I really love having that before, but actually if I'm gonna have any support crew or anybody there, I don't want them to be my close people, because when they see me in the situation I'm in, and I don't want to have anybody that would allow me to moan at them, because if there's I've learned that nobody to moan to, I don't moan. Actually during race, I always just on my own.
No, I'm with you 1,000% on that one. I think you can have too close a relationship, and as you say, your loved ones don't want to see you in such struggle, So then you get this conflict, really. So you're dead right. For me, you want your crew to be incredibly knowledgeable, in that role, in that environment, to understand you well enough, but not have that deep emotional connection that then, it biases too much what you need from them. Because while I'm on this one, Alex, I've seen it many times with some really good friends who are amazing runners. And when they really struggle, their support team give them what they think the person wants. And they do want it in that moment because they're feeling crap. And so they play to that, and they end up dropping out of a race. And then half an hour later, they're like, I feel okay. I'm absolutely gutted. Because what they needed really was to kick their ass out the checkpoint and get them back on the road or the track,
Yeah. This is where I find in these kind of things, rules of thumb, but that you have memorized from experience are the best. So I have the rule that if I feel like giving up, I never give up on the first time I feel like giving up. No matter what, if things change in a while, then reassess. But when they do go like that, when you gotta consider wrong, I think I heard that one also from Scott Jurek, just really take in the worst thing. So I was like, how bad is it? Is it a broken ankle? Are you really gonna go to hospital? All that shit. But give it attention. and then after that, I just keep going for a while. And if it really is shit, then give up. Yeah, I got my ass kicked by a cycling trip the other week because I'm trying to switch to cycling, but the running stamina doesn't transfer to the bike at all. I'm so surprised. And I was on the bike.
To that.
Oh my god! I bonked and I was like, I had to stop and be like in a place. I'm like, I know this. Like such a rookie mistake. If I was running, I would have noticed it, but.
Yeah.
But then after that, I didn't give up. I gave it another, 5 more hours, and then I was like, I'm gonna cut it here, right?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting point in there as well, Alex, about how we overgeneralize skills and things, and I kind of like have an awareness of how much something's contextual, and you have a skill set that works really well for one thing. Some of it will carry over, but don't get carried away. And that fits really with resilience, where we say a person will have a level of resiliency, and resiliency represents a kind of general trait or ability, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say they'll go into any environment and do really well, because there might be something in that environment that they're just not prepared for, or they've got the skills for, which is, as you say, swapping to a bike from running and thinking you're at that level that you are on the running, and then realising, oh shit, not quite.
Nope. But then I would have expected at least just having because you're talking about resilience. It's interesting how it relates to some of the behavioral economics. You talk about grit. Separate concepts. I know some people have made their careers on it, some people have challenged it. But it was interesting for me in that case that I was expecting to, at least when things go bad, to have the grit to transfer and be like, you know what, this is whatever. But I failed the way I failed like years ago in running. It was totally emotionally I was mad. Everything was going like, oh, why are you doing this shit? It's the weekend. All the unnecessary thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I've got some thoughts on that one, Alex. Because I'm in a similar world to you, by the way. I must disclose. I live about 22 miles from Durham Uni, and I don't ride much, but I hate getting the bus, so I pushed myself to get back on the bike, and I rode there and back, and I was absolutely done. And what I realised is, it's not that you don't have a lot of the strategies, but it's because the cues in both the environment and you to a degree are slightly different. So, where we might think, if I was running and I'm really struggling, one of my go-tos might be to count steps, I count paces, and I'm feeling really crap. Just forget everything else and count your steps. When I get on a bike, it doesn't naturally kick in because it's a different task.
Yeah.
But it kind of can work, but you've got to get conditioned to that. And so I think what you're saying about those skills you have, it's not that they won't transfer, it's just it won't be instantaneous, and it might be slightly different. And I think that's then where it's that practice, it's that exposure, and over time, the things you were doing well on the run, you will be able to generalize to a degree.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's going to be faster than, the more context you get exposed to, there's got to be general learning. We know that. But because it didn't make me think, I don't know if it's a tangent about debates about like when people have thought, like they think about psychological concepts or methods, and everybody goes like, oh, but there's context. Like, yeah, but really we're talking about metaphorically having a spanner, and all you need is to tweak it a little bit, like adjust. We're not talking about an entirely different thing, but then we write a lot of stuff in text rather than, showing it, whatever. And then papers just sound like we can't generalize at all. So that is one of my bugbears. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but
it does.
basically, I said this thing to my wife the other day where I was like, I actually think psychology is as advanced as the other sciences that we've got. It's just that people want to believe a lot more in their unique case being so unique and not taking someone else's word. So they want to struggle on their own. It's an implementation problem at this stage.
Okay.
But that's a hardcore statement. I was a bit upset by just like not being allowed to say anything, like we don't know anything in psychology. I don't know why it was. Wow. So annoying.
Yeah, well, it's certainly an interesting field when you get onto that level. I mean, it's nice for me when, as we said at the start of this conversation, when I look at it from the ground up, when I look at it from the experience of running and think about it, it seems a lot simpler. But of course, then when you want to generalize it, then it gets a bit more challenging. And I think I'm always aware of that with endurance as well, of people overgeneralizing, whether that's coaches or people with a product to sell, so many different influences that will have a different effect on each person. And it's that cocktail, it's an algorithm. And some of it's general, and then some of it's specific. And that's a bit that I'm really interested in with the research, about being able to unpick that, not across the globe, but for example, with a small group of runners or athletes or, people I'm working with. What's that person's algorithm? What universal bits do they have? How does that universal bit interact with that task in that environment? And write an almost unique code, but it's based on general principles. And I guess that's what theory is supposed to do, isn't it? It's supposed to give you general principles.
Yeah, and then see how it applies. Yeah, that's very interesting. It made me think about, because in my day job, I actually work with lots of programmers, and I'm a researcher for, digital design. So I'm constantly faced between, algorithms interfacing with, human heuristic, how, people make stuff. So it's very interesting to think, can we have every human mental, thought, every mental aspect, every heuristic, every qualitative experience, then broken down into algorithms? We don't need to go to that level, I don't think. But yeah, from what you've done in your studies, you can see that you are cautious about that. You're not one of the people that is just going to go and give us a formula. So I know what you mean.
No, not at all. I would like to be able to say these things might be important, and these things might have an effect on this, but certainly not going to then look to make blanket statements.
Yeah. Because I just say these things to pretend like I know, but like I've trained in quant as well at the PhD level, but like it's never intuitive for me. And I've just been thinking, like, when I read papers and everybody reports on whether something happened by chance or not, and that's what they're happy about. But I'm like, yeah, but all that matters to me is, like, is it a big enough effect? Like, oh, it works 10% of the time. I'm like, well, why am I gonna bother doing it? Like, so what in your studies? That's what I don't remember looking at. I don't think I looked at. So how did the importance of the factors for us? Let's stick to the one that you presented at the Explore conference. Do you remember how an importance? You don't need to give the number.
So
general, like rank ordering. I know we're on the run for a while, so I don't want to like make you get stuff out of memory.
No, hopefully I'll put this into simplest terms, because within the results of that first study, we mentioned about this idea of a level of personal resiliency. So, which is kind of like a stable trait of the person. We also had the relationship to the environment had a similar size effect on well-being, and also a couple of measures of social support at different levels. Now, the most interesting part was that they were all, the effect was through fulfilling the need for autonomy. So, and that accounted for, I think, something like 80% of the variance in well-being was accounted for via a sense of autonomy. So you can interpret that as saying some support that comes from within, support from the environment, support from people, helps us to sustain that we feel in control. We feel like we have choice and we have freedom. And that's the biggest, or one of the biggest findings of the importance of maintaining a sense of control, feeling in control, not feeling overwhelmed. And then the second part is when we look at ill-being separately. So, when we have real negative emotions, the more potentially damaging states, then what becomes important are factors outside of the person. So that's when you've exhausted your personal resources and you then are reliant on support that's around you. And that led to this similar effect, that support from the community, so from other people in the polar environment, and personal resiliency to a degree, were mediated by a sense of relatedness, a sense that I have support outside of myself that can help me. And that became the most important thing. So generally, when we feel in control, we feel good. These different factors support us to feel in control. When the shit hits the fan, that's when we're looking to the wider environment. I need some help.
Yeah, mommy, help!
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. You're on the sat phone or you're whatever, but and that comes back again, Alex, to this idea of navigating and negotiating for resources. That someone who's quite bloody minded might think, I'm just going to keep going by myself and I'm going to make really bad decisions. I'm going to get frostbite. I'm going to get hypothermia. Someone who's really switched on will go, hang on a minute, I'm in trouble here and I'm going to go and get what I need. And so that's what I'm trying to show in my studies, I guess.
Yeah, because that's a level of maturity. Yeah. But it's interesting. You're the first person I've ever heard the idea about ill-being from. So I don't know if it's something that you've thought of, if there's something in the literature, but definitely clicks. But just describe it in a bit more detail, so I'm sure I'm getting it right. So yeah, obviously everybody gets well-being, but then I remember in your talk you were talking about ill-being and well-being happening at the same time as well. So
yeah, so we don't, and this is supported in the literature. It's supported by neuroscience as well. That there's different things underpinning well-being and ill-being. Deeply, there'll be a strong correlation, but they are different things. So well-being's not just one continuum. We have well-being and ill-being that coexist. Mm-hmm. And we can have bad thoughts and feelings alongside good, as you might intuitively think. In a period of time, some bad stuff happens, good stuff happens. And it's prizing them apart, basically, with this study. And I think saying generally when things are going well, I've got one specific cocktail that's helping me with that. But actually when things go bad, there might be some different things that I need. Okay.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, Alex.
Yeah. Because I think that is the definite skill of ultra runners that I've seen. You know, just being able to know when things are not going great, that it's a different ball game. Interesting.
Definitely. I mean, I know one example I use from ultra running myself is the use of sleep, and you know, knowing when to pull back, because, and this is kind of like my hypothesis a little bit, and there will be support for it to a degree, but there's almost a point of no return with endurance activity. There's a point where if you don't manage yourself well enough, you may not be able to recover. If you deplete yourself too far, then that's when it's game over. And so some of the skill is knowing when to pull back, when to rest, when to recover, when to, you know, when it's nutrition, when it's your cognitive strategies. It's kind of that flow chart of, okay, is it this, is it that? Am I okay there? You know. And the example I'll use is, so I've done the hard mills 160-mile race 4 times now. I've completed twice and dropped out twice. And really interestingly, because I'm not fast, I've always been up against the cutoffs for time. And I've always had that thing of when you think it's more beneficial to keep pushing than it is to stop and rest. You know, which sounds obvious. I'm going to have some rest and I'll perform better. Or I'm going to push on, perform a lot worse.
Yeah, I don't do well with the ones where you're chased at the back, because I'm very good at giving up and then going again. That takes time.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back again of that understanding your toolbox and seeing yourself as one part of that toolbox and looking at the other components as well. You know, we've just got this range of things that can support us.
Yeah, that definitely resonates, because recently I've realized, because that's what I'm thinking always about. Like, as soon as I have one night of sleep where I wake up and I can't sleep, I'm switching to long-term stress. So I pull back after that, take a day off, and then everything gets fixed within a day. Whereas if you push through that, oh my God, it's never a good idea.
No, definitely. And I think you're right there with the sort of physiological components, Alex, that the mind and body, the sort of biopsychosocial approach, they all matter. If you're not getting some of them fundamentals correct, there's going to be an issue or a decrement in performance, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like, for me personally, I've always underestimated doing anything different about sleeping, because I've always slept 9 hours. Ever since I've been a kid, if I sleep less, I'm just groggy, and it's normally oversleeping compared to others. But I'm like, it helps me recover a lot. But now I'm aging. I'm noticing sometimes I can't get it. So I'm gonna have to look at some tools and things.
Yeah. So that would be a great example where, if you were looking at some kind of race where sleep deprivation is going to be a factor, you've got to condition yourself to that to some degree, and it's really beneficial, to do so, just to negate some of that effect.
and to do like a Goggins type of training where he intentionally goes dehydrated so that he can get familiar with the feeling in practice. That's something I've never tried. I've never tried to intentionally work out in bad, making myself be in dealing with ill, what do we call it? Ill being.
Well, I think that's where, the more I go down this road, the more I'd say it's about graded conditioning, graded exposure, not I'm going to kick the shit out of the body, So if, you've got a race where you've got to go overnight, you're not used to it, you might practice having a bit less sleep once a week and then going for your run. Or you might have a train and run. You run later in the day than you usually would. You don't rip up your whole script. You tweak part of it, and then you build. And I'm not no expert, but for me, I know when I have longer races, because of family commitments and stuff, I always shift the long runs to overnighters at the end, so I can practice for both. I can practice for the fatigue, but also the sleep deprivation. In that sort of last couple of months, because I'm like you, I like sleep.
It's good. It really helps. One of the things that I mentioned at the conference, I was thinking when I was looking at all of your stuff, and I was thinking, Maslow was probably right. Because I don't know if you still because that self-determination theory also sounds like some of the top layers of what he does. Obviously, then it doesn't focus on physiological stuff because you're looking at the psychology. But then it was interesting, revisiting some of his stuff where it normally gets depicted as a pyramid with the self-actualization on top, which I thought was something similar to the autonomy in your model. But maybe I'm just, kind of making parallels there. But he had self-transcendence at the top.
Yeah. I think, SDT sort of follows in that positive psychology area that Maslow was the precursor to the people who followed. And there's a lot of things that make sense within that. I don't think, and I'm not an expert on Maslow per se, but the triangle and that approach, there's support for a lot of the elements, but there's not support for the triangle and that way, like you were alluding to there. It's not necessarily a triangle, but the components matter.
It'll be interesting if you can give me some reading at some point. I'll pester you because I'm really interested, because I've always been interested in psychology, but every time I look at what's required to then move properly, like with the British Psychological Society, you have to study disorders, and I'm like, well, I'm just not going to be good at this shit. I'm focusing more on high performance, and that seems to always be in other parts, it seems like psychology is not focused historically that much on well-being, but maybe it's changing. Maybe I'm not close enough to it. So give me some reading.
I think so. No, I'll definitely do that for you, Alex. Because just to say, because you've touched on something that's really close to my heart, by the way, because I've struggled with mental illness my whole life, and addiction, or alcohol, but I've also always been a sports performer, and I was always interested in how I could have a good life through that, not just surviving, not just existing. So I've always been drawn to that similar areas you've just said. What's a good life look like? And I'm intensely wanting to understand how you can keep going.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the more I was at one point in the PhD, I was just like realizing some of this is like, you look around with people that are scientists, look at the kind of job that you're actually doing. It actually doesn't make you healthier, it's a bit unhealthy. And then the whole enterprise, I think, starts with people getting together and thinking about like, how can you live a better life? It's the other sciences, don't you? Jesus Christ. There should be some answer there. But I mean, I can tell that you've got the same like mentality of like going for it and actually living. That does get you. Yeah, I stopped drinking a year ago. I was never that much off the rails, but it was always like I was hardcore. But it's the same thing when you look at it. Like people with ADHD end up being addicted. So knowing that actually there's a craving for hardcore experience to feel alive, right? It becomes obvious.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I think that's
that way. It's like sometimes when I'm just think if you're any physical to feel alive, that's when some of the stuff. But I think there's other ways where you can find yourself stuck and really apply to get the same kind. But
yeah, definitely.
Learned that when I was like drinking and partying.
Yeah. You know what, Alex? This is where I mean, I'm not kind of like what's the word, like almost evangelical about this theory that I'm based in. But one of its strong assets is it offers an explanation for the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And it says, that basically, and I still sort of check myself as I say it, that there's certain things that are really important to us as humans that are the same as getting, water or light, if we were a flower, and it's these needs. And if our needs are met, we flourish and we grow. But if our needs aren't getting met, we find substitutes, we find other things, and that's where it links into addiction and different things. And you're trying to fulfill something, but you're not quite getting the healthiest thing to fill it with. And that makes sense to me as an individual. The fact if you try to fill a void with something, and now sort of long distance exercise and things, some of it plays to the negative element, but actually the negative element's a hell of a lot smaller, and it feeds a lot more of the positive, if that makes sense.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. I think it could have been that I've been like riled up when I was telling my wife that we know like what flourishing is. I think there's almost a formula. I'm not supposed to say it, right? But when you've experienced it, you want to tell people. It's like this shit, like when you have all of your layers kind of satisfied to a level, does work. But it's not fucking easy, don't get me wrong.
No, absolutely not. Oh, you're dead right. Life gets in the way, doesn't it, all the time? It's a moving train and things are changing, and But I think again, Alex, that when you're generally living in a good way, your ability to buffer these bumps is a lot better. Like you've got a much bigger set of shock absorbers on when you're generally getting these needs met.
Yes, I think that is a pretty good one to leave it on. I don't know where you're up to in your run, but I don't want to milk the conversation. I think we're on to something here. We can have a conversation another time, but this is just...
Alex, I've done 2 additional loops on me run before I got back to the A19, so I'm probably going to be close to I wouldn't say a half marathon here, but I think I'll get 8 miles done, and we've just chatted, and it's been wonderful.
Lovely to chat. By the way, I don't post this straight away, so if you think anything needs to be cut out, it's gonna give me some work, but go for it. Just send me an email.
Alex, mate, I'm an open book. So whatever it is, it is. If it's come out of my mouth, I've said it, and I'll leave that to your discretion whether it works for your purposes. But
no, I don't want to edit. I'm busy enough, you know. Like this is the whole point. Like, I talk and then dump.
Oh no, I've really enjoyed it. It's been a new experience. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully we can keep in touch and chat again.
Hell yeah! At least at Explore, I'm gonna see you. But if not, we're gonna chat before.
Definitely, and I'll think on, by the way, and try and have a rustle up some papers and stuff for you.
Oh yeah, give me some reading. That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. Right, well, listen, I'm going to cross back over this busy-ish A19 road, the last mile back to home then.
Cool. All right, lovely to chat.
You too, Alex. Take care. All the best, my friend.